Why back with more art? And today we are drawing Melissa. It's Melissa art day. Yes. Mali already knows how this looks, but there's a twist. She's gonna look a bit what's the word? How do I say this? I don't want to use the word I'm thinking. I don't think there is another way to describe it. Mommy vibes. I'm gonna make her expression when coloring and when shading. It's gonna be a little bit more like a seductive vibe. What did I come into? Ghost. Ghost. I haven't even started yet. What do you mean what did I come into? Haven't even started. I haven't touched the drawing. I haven't touched my pen. I haven't done anything bad. This is gonna be great. This is honestly, let's be honest, this is nothing compared to what I've done in the past with the Maliek's chat or Maliek's Katsuki. Like honestly, I think this is the most normal art I've ever done for Mali. But of course, I'm gonna try and make it a little bit unbearable. Somehow, I don't know. I don't know how. But yeah, that's what I want. Also, I'm thinking maybe I want to have something in the background, but I don't really know what. I don't know if there are some if I should have like some kind of like scary video in the background or something. I don't know, or just music. I just feel like I need to listen to something. Another true crime. I do not know. But for now, let's just start. While we all think about what I can listen to in the background. Honestly, I don't even know if my OBS will take up the sound. I have. It's a thank you, Lime Boy. Thank you.
ジュゲムジュゲム五行のすり切れ
And
海砂利
thank
水魚の
you
水魚
for
松雲
the
来松風来松クーネルところ
follow.
に住むところ油麹のブラ
I
麹
hope
パイポ
you
パイポ
like
パイポの修輪岩修輪岩のグーリンダイグーリンダイのポンポコピーポンポコナーの超救命の超助
If you end up staying until I finish the drawing, I hope you like the result. It's been a while since I last drew. Honestly, I think I haven't drawn since last drawing stream, which is probably like 2 weeks. I haven't touched my tablet, so I don't even know how it's gonna turn out. I don't remember how to color. I don't remember anything. The follow notification. I didn't know what to put. Okay, this is the thing. I just found it and I was like, oh yes, I remember that time I listened to this for the first time. I loved it, so I'm just gonna have it in the background as a follow notification sound. Also because the more I listen to it, I will eventually learn how to say it, right? I want to remember from memory how to say that. I know there is a song saying this, but I do not remember it. At some point, I did learn how to say it. Okay, Melissa. I literally did not remember how to draw. I don't remember. Plus, I've been working on something on another drawing program. So to make things worse, I haven't touched Clip Studio in a while either. So hopefully I remember everything. I wonder what next, what I should draw next for Mali. Like, is there anything he hates that I can draw? This needs to go up. I've never been good with this liquify tool. You know what? The easiest way to do this is lasso tool. Lasso tool is your best friend. Liquify can be difficult. Oh damn. No. No. Okay, fixed it. It's fine. Everything is fine. Momentai. Everything is not fine. Okay, I need to listen to something. Okay, let's pause this. Let's pause this drawing, and I need to have something in the background. What is it? What does my YouTube recommendation thingy has? It has a lot of VTubers. It has repo. How to know how many lives you have lived? 8 signs of reincarnation. Damn. 4 real ways Earth could be destroyed tomorrow. What if you landed on Proxima Centauri? There is nothing. There is nothing. There is nothing. Oh wait, maybe I know. Oh, here is my favorite Mexican YouTuber. Let's see if we. I want to have something horror related. So horror story. Ooh, what the fuck is that? Okay, let's listen to 27 true scary stories that that's loud, are binge worthy. But I need to get OBS to freaking record a sound. Oh my god, there are way too many things. No, this is the anime. Chrome? Here? Oh yeah, actually, we need this. There we go. That's needed. Can you hear it? Can you hear this? Doesn't say. If we do the game audio, I guess. This is anime. That is not it. Oh wait, that's the wrong. This is what you're supposed to say. Where is it? Where is it? This is not it. Skinwalker. Why isn't it picking up this sound? Why is it not picking up the sound? If I do this. If I do this. It's not. Why? Why is it not working?
Anyway, we were
There
done
we
making
go.
our rounds and heading home.
Got it.
Walking because we didn't have a car or a four-wheeler back then. And we'd cut through the woods, and that's when we came upon it. Blood everywhere. Splattered on the trees, in the grass, in the creek. Everywhere.
I do this.
And at first we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We'd seen it sometimes.
This is better.
They scavenge and then start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they bred with feral dogs, but this wasn't like that. When a pack of dogs or wolves or coyotes attack something, they do it right.
I mean,
They'll pick off one
honestly,
that's
it's
weak,
just
sick, old, or just small. They'll hunt it, draw it into a corner someplace it can't get out of,
yeah. This is
and
the
then
only
they'll
thing
run
that
it
would
right
be
to the
heard.
biggest
So
one, the alpha. Hear
trying
all
to
these
just have it
stories
in the
anywhere you
background.
listen to podcasts on the Let's Read podcast.
No video, I guess. It's just a picture. Okay, from the beginning, because I did not pay attention. I just heard Skinwalker and I was like, ooh, Skinwalker. And that's it. Alright. Okay, we can continue. We can continue, Melissa.
My father told me a story once, and I'll never forget it for a few reasons. I think it's the first story he told me as a child. It's also the story of how my grandfather died. But honestly, that isn't the reason you hear stories on TV or sometimes you overhear something in a public place. People talk about ghosts and aliens and you think to yourself, that isn't real.
That
They're making
is
it up,
real.
or they're mistaken, or they're crazy.
No.
Something like that.
Ghosts are real.
You just can't believe it until something happens. Something that brings it all together.
That's what
Connects the dots in a way that you didn't think of before.
Something happened to him.
Maybe it happens to you.
Pretty scary what happened to him,
the story again and again happening to different people. It doesn't take long for the world to become a bit bigger than you thought. As I said, this is a story my father told me, but I never believed it, even though he swore up and down that it was true. It wasn't until I started clicking around the internet that I started to believe.
No.
I started to hear other stories just like the one my father told me.
Later.
It didn't take me long to believe in the rake. That's not what my father called it, of course. He's never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't know what the consensus has taken to naming it. When he chose to call it something other than it or that thing, he called it Skinwalker, after an old Navajo tale his grandfather told him. But I'll tell you the story the way he told it to me. We were out hunting one night, killing coyotes for $50 a skin. We lived on a dairy farm in Ohio, and sometimes we'd kill a calf. We'd do it every night because we needed the money. Sometimes while we were out, we'd come upon a deer and kill it. Our landlord didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights and save us some money.
Animals.
Anyway, we were done making our rounds and heading home, walking because we didn't have a car or a four-wheeler back then. And we'd cut through the woods, and that's when we came upon it. Blood everywhere, splattered on the trees, and the grass, and the creek, everywhere. And at first we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We'd seen it sometimes. They scavenge and then start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they bred with feral dogs, but this
Bears
wasn't
are
like
known
that.
for killing farm
When a pack of
animals,
dogs
and
or
they're
wolves
also
or
known
coyotes
to be
attack something,
vectors of
they
rabies.
do it right.
Oh,
They'll pick off one that's weak,
really?
sick, old, or just small. They'll hunt it, draw it into a corner someplace it can't get out of, and then they'll run it right to the biggest one, the alpha.
Oh shit, I forgot
And that
my
deer will never see
my
that
Discord
alpha.
is.
They might hear it, but it
I will
won't
just
see
mute
it.
it on
It'll just notice that
OBS.
its throat is gone, and then it will
Just in
drop
case I get
dead.
a message.
It's quick,
An
it's
important
clean.
message.
That wasn't what happened here. Something had run up on a den of deer. Coyotes won't attack a den, and wolves neither, because they'd get too much of a fight. There were 3, I think. 3 bodies just torn apart.
Oh
You
shit.
see a head here, a leg there, a torso over there.
Oh,
Predators
that's
don't do that. They don't leave behind scraps. What had done this hadn't done it for food. It had done it for fun. But we didn't know that. We saw a bunch of carcasses and we think it's something that we've got to take care of. I remember my dad telling me to go home. He thought it was a pack of feral dogs, but I wasn't leaving him, and I damn sure wasn't walking through 2 miles of woods alone with nothing but a .22 and a pocket knife. I was only 13 at the time, so a .22
Yeah, I
rifle
wouldn't
was about
leave
the
my
only gun
father
I
alone
could
either.
reliably use. Dad had the shotgun, and he wasn't going anywhere without it. It took me a while to convince him, but finally we began tracking whatever did that. It wasn't hard either. We just followed the blood. Either that thing bled a deer before it got away, or it dragged one for a mile. I don't know. I know that I'd never seen my dad scared before that night.
You
We
know
started
it's
hearing
bad when your
noises.
dad is
I've
scared.
been in a lot of woods in my life. I've been all over the world, and I ain't never heard noises like I heard that night. I heard things screaming. Deer and fox and rabbits and raccoons and birds. Just scared. Now keep in mind, this is maybe 12 or 1 o'clock. Except the fox and some birds, nothing was supposed to be awake. But they weren't just awake. They were moving. I saw flocks of birds that night fly straight into trees just trying to get out of there. We came upon a pack of coyotes, nearly shot a couple thinking that it was what we were looking for. But then we saw that they were running towards us. They ran right past us, didn't even notice, and then some deer did the same, and then some rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple of wild hogs. These things were supposed to be eating each other, and the only thing they cared about was getting out of there. We should have put it together that maybe whatever we were tracking, it wasn't something we were supposed to see, and it wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that was my dad's nature, to go toward trouble, to fight. And knowing what I knew about what my father did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally get into an open valley. It was normally a soy field, but it wasn't in season, so it was just flat dirt. We saw the tracks. Then a lot of
So
the
fun
animals
fact,
fleeing
in
the forest had
agriculture,
paved over the land.
Talking about skinwalkers
But
is
where
very
the deer
bad.
blood was, nothing had
really?
taken a single step,
Never
like they were
lived
leaving
to
it
be
for us to
corrupt
find.
Medicine?
The tracks were shallow. Whatever it
Men are
was
witches.
couldn't have weighed more than
Asking
100
about the
pounds.
ye-
But that didn't mean much.
Mm?
A bobcat weighing around 40 pounds nearly tore my damn throat out once. And all that means
Someone
is that
won.
it's quick and it's hard to hit.
Means you're
So we
just...
follow the tracks.
Wow.
And it doesn't take long for us to find where it is. There's this
One
old
question.
schoolhouse that
Let
sits
me
on the
just
top of
pause
the hill.
it.
Half
One
of it had been
where
ripped
the
out
hell
by a
did it-
tornado.
okay.
And
One question. Are the skinwalkers? And Adoshi is the word for skinwalker in. Oh, that's a very difficult word. Question. Are skinwalkers? What did I say? Screenwalker? No, skinwalkers. They are able to mimic your appearance and voice, right? And it's like I believe that if you ask about them, you're the skinwalker yourself. Where do skinwalkers live? Are they like everywhere? Are they worldwide, or is there like a specific place? Because not too long ago, my younger sister and me, we were alone in the house, and we were taking care of my older sister's dogs, and it was like 2 a.m., something like that, and she took out the dogs, and when she called them, she was like, okay, so one of the dogs' name is Bamba, and she always does whatever she wants when she's outside. She never listens. So my sister was like, Bamba, come back. And in the distance, she heard my older sister's voice shout, Bamba. And she ran up to me and she was like, Sammy, this happened. I'm like, where the fuck is Bamba? And she's like, she's outside. And I'm like, how dare you leave Bamba outside? Then I ran outside and got Bamba inside. But like, what was it? Because there is no echo. And it's not the first time it happens. The American Southwest is where the typical story originates from. Oh, so it's just American. So is there something else that can like mimic voices or something? Because that I've heard it. My sister heard it. My mom heard it. So yeah, like is it can it be a skinwalker, or is it something else? Is it a ghost? Because if it is a skinwalker, I'll be scared. If it's a ghost, I don't mind. Anyways,
when nobody lived there, not for a long time. We caught
there's a
homeless
lot of
people in
things
there
known to mimic
sometimes, or
human voices
druggies
to lure
looking for
people
a
in.
safe place to
Dude,
shoot
that's
up.
creepy.
We figured maybe that was it. Maybe it was just some sick
That's
kid riding
crazy.
a high. But we didn't think that for long. We get within 50 yards and we hear this noise, a screeching kind of sound. It was sort of made up of two different sounds. One, a high-pitched screech. Another was a low-pitched
I just
growl.
hope I never see what it is.
It was making both at the same time. We get within 20 yards and we hear this sound.
I want to know what it is.
I can remember thinking that it sounded like paper being torn apart while someone was swinging water in a bucket back and forth. Dad looks at me, kneels down and whispers, I gotta stay behind him because we're about to corner him.
You live in the
Any
frozen
animal will
fjords
fight when
of
it's
Norway,
cornered,
which has
especially
a
when it's a
very lengthy
predator.
mythology and
But we
folklore.
can tell by
That's
the tracks
true,
that it's just
but I've
one.
never heard
He
of
tells me it's
anything
probably a
that
single
can
feral
mimic
dog,
human
probably
voices.
rabid. The plan is to sneak up on it while it's eating, shoot it, and then keep shooting until it doesn't move anymore, and then slit its throat. If it gets to Dad, it's my job to shoot it or stab it to get it off of him.
Okay,
So he walks up and
wait,
I'm right behind him,
but
just a tad to his side so I can
Norway
see what it is.
does have like
I wish to this day that I hadn't.
stories
He was
about
leaning over
witches.
a
That's for
carcass,
sure. I
tearing
think,
off its flesh
but
and throwing what it doesn't nibble at its side.
There
There's
is
blood all
this
over the brick,
one
glistening in the
place
moonlight. It's
that
pale white,
has
human-looking, but not quite human. It had arms and
its
legs like a
name
human,
called like
but it sat like a monkey
after
hunched over.
witches.
Its hands weren't
One
normal.
of the places I
They
lived
had
before,
long fingers with claws at the end.
literally called
So we see that and my dad hesitates. He
Witch's
wasn't about
Hill.
to fire on a person, so he clears his
Something
throat
like that,
to try to
I
get it to
think.
turn around. I swear to God, All the noise just ceased.
Maybe witches?
I ain't never heard true silence before that and not after it. But for 2 seconds, nothing. Nothing made any noise, which made it all the louder when it turned around.
Like right now I
Made
live
this shrill
in the
cry
middle of
and
nowhere.
jumped on Dad.
It wouldn't make sense.
He got a shot off. I think he missed it. If he hit the thing, it didn't mind, but it was on him, tearing parts of him off. I started shooting it with a .22 point blank, but it barely bled. The thing. I got off 5 rounds, and then I started hitting it with the gun butt. It wasn't budging. It didn't even register that I was there. It clawed at my dad, taking off bits of his flesh.
Oh.
It started on his torso, ripping off the skin, and then it moved up. It tore off his throat, his nose, his eyes. It scalped him. And then it started digging in and ripping off the bottom half of his jaw, the little bones in that tube in your neck, and then his ribs. I don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow my dad's knife ends up in the thing's shoulder, and my dad ends up on my back. I'm running, and by God, I'm running faster than I'd ever run before or after, and I know it's following me. I end up back in the woods, opposite the ones we've been in. I'm heading towards my landlord's house because it's a half a mile away. I can hear this thing screeching and moaning. I hear the tree branches crack and get thrown around. It sounds like someone taking an axe to every single tree I pass. It's cracking so loud and often, but I'm not looking back.
Yeah, don't look back.
Finally, I trip into gravel. I look up and there's my landlord and a bunch of his buddies drinking around a campfire. I scream and cry and they come over. I'm telling them to call an ambulance and he looks at me, and I'll never forget what he said. "What's that on your back?" he asked me.
It's not the
And
father.
just as he said it, he saw one of those god-awful flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. It was what was left of my dad. Most of his head, his torso, but nothing after the waist. Suddenly we hear it screeching, and he grabs me. My dad gets thrown on the ground, and I'm fighting him, crying because I think we can still save him somehow.
I don't
But my
think so.
dad had been gone before I even picked him up. He has to pick me up and throw me inside before I come with him. He and his buddies were all inside and they're locking doors and getting guns ready. The landlord looks at me asking, "What happened? What happened?" But I just don't know what to tell him. He pieced enough of it all together to understand that there was something dangerous out there. All the lights in the house are on and someone calls the cops, and they'll be there in 15 minutes. We look outside and see it walk in front of the fire they'd made. I don't know what it is. One of them says it looks like an ape, and suddenly something goes through the window.
Oh.
We shoot at it, but it ain't the thing. It's my landlord's dog.
What?
Just the body though, not his head
No,
or
the
legs.
dog!
And we start pushing things in front of the door and windows when we hear something in the garage. I remember one of his friends saying that the doors were open, and we hear metal and glass just getting ripped apart. We put a couch and a TV in front of the door to the garage. It banged around some more, but then it got quiet. Not silent like it was before. We could hear it move around some, and the guys were talking, making sure the guns were ready. Someone hands me a pistol, and no sooner did I cock the hammer back did we hear something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screech again, except now it was louder, and it didn't echo and fade out because it was inside with us.
Uh-oh.
We all rushed
Well,
to the
they
one
are
door leading
fucked.
upstairs, and we got to it just as that thing did. It opened it just a bit, and 4 or 5 men just slammed into it. It got its hands through. Someone with a shotgun took care of that, put the barrel right up to its wrist and pulled the trigger, cut its hand clean off. That only made it angry though.
No
It
shit.
started pushing on the door, clawing. We were on one side, pushing as best as we could, and it was on the other doing the same. That wood just wasn't going to hold, so someone tells us to keep our heads down. Suddenly, the top half of the door is just gone. My ears are ringing and there are splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them just unloaded on the top of that door. I don't really know where it went after that. The police showed up. I was still glued to that door, what was left of it,
I
and the
can't
sun
do
was
it.
up before they got me off it. They put me in a hospital for a while, and a lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back. Not for a
Trauma.
long, long time. When we got back home, I got a job from the landlord working on the farm. We didn't talk much, not about that thing. But I signed up for the army when I was 19, and he sat me down to drink some scotch as a send-off. I asked him right away what the police told him. The story they went with was a wild animal, probably a wolf or maybe a bear that had migrated north or something. I asked him about how they could say that when they had the hand. He looks at me, stunned. He tells me that hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it in his car wrecked and drove into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken away by an animal. And the cops, when they would acknowledge the hand even existed at all, said that it simply was the paw of a bear that looked like a human hand. I never ended up talking to that landlord again. I guess he went missing when I was in basic, and the cops never found him. They said he owed some people some money and just ran away, but I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I wouldn't, even if I had the whole goddamn US Army at my back. And that was my father's story of the rake, or skinwalker. I'm still not sure what to think. But as I grew older, and when my mother died, I don't think my father felt that he had anything left and he might as well settle old scores. He went back into those woods, I guess, and he never came back. The FBI was called and they did a show and dance for everyone involved, but I knew that they weren't really looking, and they never did find him.
I swear, eyebrows are so hard to draw. Not just IRL, but on drawings as well. Oh yeah, I wanted to do like no, this
I'm 21 and a college senior from Connecticut.
This one is not good.
I live in a semi-rural area about 20 minutes from the closest supermarket and fast food. I go to school in Washington, D.C.
Like
Not the nice part either, but the part where substance users are a problem and cops are reassuring rather than troublesome. I've definitely seen some things in my day. It would be good to mention here that I'm not some glandular freak. I'm 6'1" and 240 pounds, most of it muscle.
What is that?
And Lord knows that I could drop 15 pounds or so. I love to smoke, drink, and eat, sue me. And being the good student that I am, I picked a real major, accounting. I interned for a mid-sized PR firm, doing accounting work and getting
new
paid
story,
$20
new monster.
an hour.
Yep, there.
College is expensive, so I deliver pizzas at night after the office closes.
27 true scary stories that are binge-worthy. So we have 27 stories.
From my house and 5 minutes from
It's
the beach.
like it's almost
My
3
place is
hours,
north
so
of there.
I'm gonna
I
be
deliver
here for
probably
a
another
while.
15 minutes past my house. I'm actually typing this at work in between examining the fine print on our client contracts to ensure that we are charging them every penny. Believe me, they do everything they can to short us. But anyway, basically the further north you go from the pizza place, the more countryside it gets. I work until close, and this happens at around 9:45 p.m. I'm in the back folding pizza boxes like a good little boy, and the counter girl comes back with a delivery slip. She tells me that this customer sounded weird on the phone, kind of like he was talking through a fan or through his hands, and that he was kind of gurgling. My Washington, D.C. experience instantly makes me think of some user, if you catch my drift, although around here, it's way more likely to be some benzo freak automatically assuming some weird interaction will occur. I look at the address. It's basically in the middle of nowhere. I'm a little mad because I don't want to drive that far, but screw it. Not to mention it's the weirdest ticket I've ever seen. The guy ordered a large pizza with anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, etc. Literally $15 worth of extras on top of his pizza. I go to ask the counter girl if this is right, and she says she thinks so. She couldn't really make it out, though, so she said she did her best. She's about 16 years old, so I cut her some slack. Maybe she was daydreaming while she took the call, so I'll just give them a call back to be sure. I dial the phone and it rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times, but no one answers. I hang up and call again. This time the phone goes right to The number you have dialed does not have a voicemail box that has been set up yet. Goodbye. Okay then. My manager decides to just make the pizza as ordered and we would proceed from there. I go out to deliver a separate pizza to a hilariously big guy and a couple who invited me in for drinks, but I don't drink or smoke
already
when I'm working.
sketchy from
I
the
was
know
hoping by the
the
time I got back that
person
someone
you
else delivered
dialed
that pizza
does not have
order.
a voicemail.
And surprise, surprise, no one did. And it was my turn again to pick up an order, and begrudgingly, I take the pizza and get in my car. I enter the address in my phone. It's on a side street adjacent to a park locals call open space, which despite the name is actually about 500 acres of straight woods. It's about 25 minutes away, basically the edge of our range. I put on some dubstep and crank my turbo subby while taking off towards this road. Now, if you're not from a rural area, this can be hard to explain. Winter in the woods is scary. There's never a single sound ever unless there's something larger than a cat walking around. It's just you in complete silence. Finally, I make it to the address. There are a few houses on the street, but they sit on probably 5 acres, so they're spaced out a fair amount. I'm looking for number 1134. I pass 1130, then a long stretch of road of nothing, and then it picks up again at 1144. What the heck? I just want to get this over with and get the next delivery without getting attacked by some pillhead over something as small as a pizza. I try calling their number again, and it rings and rings, and then stops ringing. Wait a minute. Someone picked up, but there's no voice. Instead, I hear a buzzing or a humming sound. It hooked up to my car stereo, and it's getting louder and louder until I just hang up because I don't want to ruin my speakers. The windows are fogging up at this point. I'm pulled over between 2 of these houses right when I roll the windows down, and I am overcome by this odor of decaying trash like driving through Newark, New Jersey. It's so gross.
Ghost.
I put the car in first and start pulling towards the next house, trying to escape it. At the end of the driveway, there's a stanchion with a light on top. The plan was to pull into this house and knock and ask if maybe they gave me the wrong number over the phone. That would make sense for these kinds of people. I'm probably 100 feet away when I see someone step out of the darkness and into the light at the bottom of the driveway. I sigh. Thank goodness. It's the guy that ordered. I'm expecting the guy to be all over the place, leaning over, acting completely out of his mind, but he's actually pretty calm. I stop the car about 10 feet away from him. He's wearing a big black coat that looks 3 times too big for him, even though he's probably got 5 inches on me.
Ghost.
I don't look right at him at first. I grab the pizza and step out
Another
of the car.
ghost, not you,
Then I grab the
ghost.
tickets
Another
and
ghost.
prepare change if he gives cash. I say to him,
It's
"Hey,
ghost
sir,
number 2.
Sorry about the wait and for all the calls I made.
Fake ghost.
Delivery's pretty far." There's no response from him. I realize that I should be watching him, considering the red flags. And the smell is extremely pungent, but I know it's not trash day. I get the pizza on the roof of my car, and he's standing there under the light on the opposite side. I finally pay enough attention to get a good look at him. The guy is basically a giant. He's wearing no shoes, and he has ripped up jeans, and there are
No, I
stains
don't know what he
everywhere.
could be, honestly.
I try to get a good look at his face, and his eyes seem to be sunken in. I can't even see the actual pupils with the light from here. It's like they're just black craters. I'm getting really sketched out at this point because the guy still hasn't moved or said a word. I stop the process and stare at him. He's staring right back at me with those freaky eyes. His head is sort of bobbing side to side, but not in any sort of fluid sense at all. Kind of like a car door, like how it stops halfway open and then you give it another shove and it stops at the all the way point. I watched his head do this with no real pattern for about 10 seconds. I'm starting to get more uneasy between the stench, his head movement, and the eyes and him still completely ignoring me. I stand frozen, and so does he. Without breaking eye contact, I take my phone out of my pocket and hold it level with the roof so I can look at the guy and my phone at the same time. Curiosity overflowing, I decide to go to the recent calls on my phone and I redial his number. The phone starts ringing, but I don't hear it anywhere. Wait a second. I do hear it. It's coming out of the quiet of the woods. I can hear a faint, distant cell phone ringing about 50 yards away in the woods, and I'm kicking myself at this point, almost soiling myself. The guy's just standing there.
Hey,
I
whoa,
swear to God,
whoa,
I see
whoa,
him
whoa.
smiling.
Jesus.
Finally, I get the courage to speak.
Oh, jeez.
Can you...
Vance,
Can you
you
please come
scared
get
me.
this?
Hello, thanks for the
Also, I think you
raid.
might have dropped your phone or something
Welcome.
when you were hiding a body or whatever in the woods.
Ah,
I laugh nervously.
we're
Still
listening
thinking
to
maybe this
scary
guy just dug too
stories.
deep into the prescription pills.
Ah,
And I see his mouth
how
open,
was
head
dream?
still bobbing,
What were you
feet
doing?
planted on the ground. He makes a sort of low, guttural, quick
My
grunt,
heart.
and then a high grunt, and then a low grunt.
How you doing?
And
How
they're
was
sort
dream?
of soft, kind of like someone clearing their
Valorant.
throat.
Oof.
At this point, I'm ready
Hey.
to book it to the driver's seat if I
How
have
was
to.
it? Did you win?
And just as I
Did
go
you
to
win?
redial that phone again, I hear him talking.
That sounds so kind of
mine.
makes sense.
The pause between
Too much
the
better than zero.
phone's not and
Good
mine
job.
was way too long.
Good job.
Phone's not literally sounded like one word. Mine came off as an octave higher. My mind is in DEFCON 5, full-on panic mode. My knees are weak and I'm literally
Take
about
a
to
good
pass
break. Rest.
out. I push the pizza to the far side of the roof away from me and I finally
From
muster out,
Valorant.
"Sir, you're freaking me out. I got a 45 and less than
Good
$20 on
night,
me.
Liz.
Just
Thanks
take
for
this
the
so I can
rain.
leave." When I say this, his head bobbing stops. His eyes are dark and burning a hole through me, and he opens his mouth again. His.
It's a robot.
What? I asked, stunned. It was his. The phone was his. The guy starts coming towards my car.
I think
Not
it's a
step,
robot.
But like one huge
It's a
muscle
robot.
spasm that propels him forward. The phone was his. He repeats. I'm on the verge of tears at this point. The guy jerk jumps again, now closer to the car. Phone's not his anymore. I blubber wordlessly, then gather myself and scream. I'm gonna call the cops, man, if you just don't get out of here. I see this guy smile, that creepy
Maybe.
smile, and without moving his mouth, I hear him say in a completely different voice, a voice I've never heard before. Go away. Stop following me. I will call the police. In another big jerky motion, the thing reaches forward, takes the pizza off the roof, and places a couple of round things that I later identify as quarters on the roof. They're surrounded by this dark liquid that spreads over the roof.
What?
I don't even think. Just get in the car and peel out down the road. I leave the hot sleeve for the pizza too.
Ooh.
I leave everything. Don't even
Nvidia
close the
has an
door all the
update.
way.
Later.
I get down the road going about 80 for a quarter mile, then pull a U-turn because I don't want to get even more lost with that psycho out there.
Which Mali do we
I
have?
whip down
Red
the road past the
Mali,
place where I had just been.
blonde
and He's
Mali,
gone. I
purple
finally get to the end of
Mali.
the road and there's a stop sign to merge with the main road. I look right to make sure it's clear, then I look left. That thing's face is 12 inches from my own where I turn. I tactically have a heart attack and peel off down the road. I finally make it back to the pizza place, shaking like crazy. I smoke just to calm down, which I never do when I'm working.
Don't smoke.
I walk in the
that's
front
not
door of the pizza
good.
place. Hey, a guy at the open space house just called back.
You see, the
he
first
said you
Mali I
forgot some
find is the
food, but,
Mali we go for.
he only ordered the pizza, right? He wants you to come back. And I start crying. I look at my phone, which had been thrown through the car when I was
Alright,
driving.
this is the Mali
There
I
are
found
14
first.
missed calls from his number. All the voicemails are empty except the last one. All I can hear is ragged breathing and
Red-haired
those low
Miley.
grunting sounds. I'm bawling my eyes out in front of this hot counter girl, but I don't even care. I sit for 10 minutes trying to calm down, and then I remember the change that he had left on the roof. I steadily go out to the car and turn on a flashlight. The roof of the car was covered in the most viscous, weird fluid, but it smells like copper. I throw up. In the panel gap between the trunk and the end of the rear window, I find the quarters. They're covered in that same gross maple syrup goop, and they're stuck to it along with the fluid. I can now see what appears to be a soft little chunk of tissue. I go to open my car and my veins turn to ice. There is a single line of this fluid going from the front quarter panel to the driver's side door. That freaking thing tried to open my door when it was next to me at the stop sign. I go back in, crying harder now. I tell the counter girl to try and call the number again for me. She tries over and over, but the phone goes right to voicemail. The next morning, I give the number to my uncle, who was a police captain a few towns over. He says the number is a burner phone paid in cash, basically untraceable, and it appears to be turned off. Now, I sleep with the lights on these days.
I think it was a person who tried to kidnap and kill him. And that's why I would never, apart from because of health reasons, I would never work night shifts.
I was 23, stalking in the woods in the Ozarks
whatever
of Arkansas, to be exact.
Job that requires home delivery.
New gear that I had been saving for months. Boots, attack vest, even a mil-spec gas mask. It was like Christmas being where I was and wanting to field test some personal prototypes. I had my nugget on hand. It wouldn't do much against the big bears, but it would ruin any snake, stray dog, or cougar's day right to hell.
That bad.
I had a bunch of
Look
strippers
what happened to him.
and
That's
two
bad.
clipazines I built, and I wanted to field test them in my pouches. I got some rolled up targets stuck in my loops and a light complement of survival gear. Compass, topographical map, thermal blanket, extra undies, MREs, canteen, and camelback, the works. Basically prepared for the inevitable invasion of any type. I was having a great time romping around the woods, playing with my field of view in the mask, testing the reliability of the clipazines, and generally having fun.
I don't.
I wandered next to a creek bed and decided it was time to practice my guerrilla tactics. It was late summer, early fall, so no danger of getting my gear wet in the non-existent stream.
I forgot
my stuff was
everything
more
I
danger
learned
of
in
water damage from my own
Jiu-Jitsu and
sweat.
Taekwondo.
After triple-checking my safety, I proceeded to do a series of screen slides and
Thank you
uphill
for that,
hustles in
but
full survivalist gear. Needless to say,
I need to fix
I
it
got
where
winded
is it
really
in
quick.
Norwegian
I
and
stood
English.
panting in that dry stream bed and decided to check my position with my topographical map and compass so I could set a course for home. In the middle of reorienting myself, I caught wind
You
of the smell.
thank you.
At first, I thought it was my sweat, but the funk quickly evolved into something worse.
To know
A dark
I would be
undercurrent of
safe,
rot,
even if
deep
there is a
notes of
ghost.
animal musk, a bassy score of raw
Or
garbage
a rubber.
punctuated by garlicky timpani, and a thick black score of something between skunk and onion sludge. I went into straight operating mode, popped an Addy from my pouch for extra focus, pulled the clipazine from my nugget. It seemed to be working fine, but if I was going to have to shoot something, I prefer not to have any risk of jamming. The smell made me gag, and I nearly puked up that Addy tablet. The smell was that strong at this point. Whatever the source was, it was definitely mobile and getting closer to me. Screw it. I pulled up my mask from around my neck and over my face. It helped a bit, but the mask wasn't 100% airtight around the joints, so some of the smell got in. I walked cautiously and slowly along the creek bed toward where the slope was shallowest, listening for twigs snapping or animal sounds from above me. I definitely heard something shuffling around up there, and it sounded bigger than what my nugget was up for. It was a near constant snuffle, grunt, and sloppy, uncoordinated crunching around bark and leaves, all mixed with a smell. My mind immediately jumped to Big Bear. And I mean big, possibly even rabid if it smelled like that. And let me tell you something about Ozark big bears, straight from my dad's mouth. My dad's lived in the Ozark for 58 years, and in that time, only two things have managed to shake him: the challenge of fatherhood and the big bears. According to him, the native black bears were hunted to near extinction between the 40s and 50s, and to correct this, the ANRC, NRCS, and Arkansas Fish and Game Commission released 250 bears into the Ozark and Ouachita Mountains. Their website insists that they were all black bears. My dad insists that that is bullcrap. According to him, more than a few of the bears released there were brown bears. They inbred with a few remaining local bears and the reintroduced blacks. Thanks to a little phenomenon known as hybrid vigor, the resulting offspring were bigger and meaner than their parents. And screw me, were they fertile. When I asked him to prove it, he simply left the summer porch, went upstairs, and came back with a manila folder labeled BB. He pulled out a couple of Polaroids and asked me to take a look. I saw a big black and brown something rooting around a clothesline. Dad directed my attention to the clothesline about 50 feet away from us, between the two poles, about 5 to 6 feet above the ground. It was the same clothesline in the picture. The something's shoulder was about a fart's length under the line, despite being further in the background. I looked through the other pictures. One was rooting through the trash, another was barely concealed by trees, all of them slightly shaky. Detail was hard to come by, but I was convinced. My dad told me 2 things about how to avoid getting attacked by the big bears. Big bears are dumb as crap, something to do with them being hybrid. This makes them more dangerous than other bears because they're not afraid of you. This also makes them smell like crap, and you'll smell them coming a mile off. If you smell a big bear, get inside, get upstairs, but take the 12 gauge and some deer slugs. If you do see a big bear and you ain't home or you ain't got a shotgun loaded with slugs, hide up a tree if you can. They're faster than you, so
I would die if I had a bear in front of me. I do not know how to climb trees.
Because after 23 years, I'd finally managed to prove my dad wrong about something. Well, half wrong. There's something in the Ozarks that matches my dad's pictures of big bears, but whatever they are, they sure as heck aren't bears. So back to my story. I would have stayed in that creek bed and waited for that something to screw off on its own business. But the light was already slanting through the trees.
No, because bears can climb
as
trees
bad as my dad made big bear sound,
Damn.
I was sure as heck not wanting to be stuck with a god-dang rabbit one after dark. And instead, I opted to climb up the opposite edge of the creek bed. I had to scramble over some big rock outcroppings and half stand, half lean against the slope of the hill. But I figured that if anything, that would just be an extra layer of protection against that something out there. I gotten a few glimpses of it over my shoulder as I climbed, but this was my first good look at it. I just couldn't stop staring. Like I said in my previous post, this was not a bear. It was bear-like.
Making noise is a good...
I've been into sci-fi my entire life.
Well, I can make noise and I can carry bears, but I can...
from my awesome late stepmom.
I not carry a high-caliber firearm.
For the first time, my freaking nerd brain immediately went, oh, a Solidor. Except it wasn't. It looked like a Solidor. A grizzly bear and a sloth had a 3-way on top of a garage heap to make it. It had a long prognathous snout like a stubby trunk, with big angular shoulders, feet that looked like manhole covers covered in dirty matted fur, and a body like a furry blimp. Its fur was the same charcoal black and dark glow brown that I saw in the pictures and full of mats and clumps of dirt. I mean, I stared at it for so long, drinking in those details, trying to make sense of it for 2.5 minutes, and it somehow didn't notice me. Jesus, these things were dumb. I remember feeling a twinge of relief. If it hadn't noticed me yet, trying to scrabble out of a rocky gully, it probably won't notice me sneaking away from it. It's gonna sound ridiculous, but I farted then. The something stopped. My breath stopped. And my heart stopped. The only sound in those woods at that moment was my freaking fart echoing, and the sound of my nose blistering under the something's odoriferous assault.
What a timing to fart.
It was like slow motion when the thing turned its head, looked back at me, sniffed the air, and stood up. It had been shuffling around crouched low to the ground the entire time. What I thought were shoulder blades were its freaking elbows. It could tie its shoes without bending, but its paws probably would have crushed its Air Jordans to bits. They were like trash can lids. It sniffed the air again and coughed or barked like it was asking me a question. It sounded like gorp. I swear on my mom, that's what it sounded like. Gorp. So there I was, The idiot who didn't listen to his dad. The awkward cringe lord who freaking farts when he's trying to sneak away from a freaking gorp. I aimed at it in center mass, and I fired. It didn't thwack into the gorp because, hey, if you're gonna die, might as well give your killer a stupid name in your head, right? Instead, the shot thwomped, if that makes sense. There was a puff of dirt and hair when it thwomped, and bless my luck, the gorp actually flinched from the impact. I waited to see blood. I guess the gorps are so covered in nasty flea-ridden hair mats that over time, their poor hygiene gave them natural body armor because I didn't see any red at all.
Oh, this is actually nice.
And gorth at me. A low growl that had my colon deciding that it was a warning because it was producing bricks enough to construct a barricade. I worked the bolt and fired another shot, this time at its ugly sloth bear elephant-looking face. And this time it did thwack, and so did the dirt a few feet to the thing's left because it ricocheted off its skull. The thing stood there staring at me like it was too dumb to realize that it could have just stood in the stream bed and grabbed me by my face while I pelted it with useless bullet after bullet. I yelled at it and fired a third shot in any direction at all, trying to scare it off. The gorp, or gorth, or big bear, or whatever it was, dropped to all fours, lurching forwards towards me. Then I did a 180 and shuffled away.
Oh, wow.
It worked. I stood there until the sky turned blue to orange before I snapped out of it and tactically retreated back home. When I got back, I told my dad the story. I probably should have mentioned that I was visiting him for a few days. He could probably smell Big Bear on me, so it was no use lying to him. When I got to the part about what the big bears really were, he refused to believe me. Then he got pissed at me, locked the doors, and camped out upstairs for the rest of our visit. I had to freaking bring him beer from downstairs when he started to talk. The weird thing is, as scared as he was and as weirded out as I was seeing him that scared, I wasn't scared myself. I remember that very clearly, not being scared at all. I guess you could say I was just too interested or curious to be scared, because if I was scared, I would have just bolted away. And I'd probably be typing this from inside of a year-old gorp turd.
Oh,
if I had to guess, that Adderall I popped probably kept me from switching into run home scared to mama mode. Well, that's how I met a gorp and lived.
I saw what was it, a YouTube reel, I think, or Instagram reel of a girl that was snowboarding and there was a bear behind her and she didn't realize at all. And the bear was like running after her. And she was just jamming to,
it was around November
to Rihanna.
Last year, and I just moved to Washington State.
She was listening to music.
To the area. I like the woods, so a few friends of mine who were huge in the woods fiends
scary.
decided to take me out to a secluded spot. What the hell, I thought. I'll do it. I need some time away from work anyway. I got the weekend off, packed my bag, cleaned the rifle, and headed over to my friend's house. We ended up about 25 or 30 miles away from the Canadian border in this forest that seemed to go on forever. I was really digging it because my home state didn't have anything like this. There were 6 of us and 2 dogs, a Labrador and a Rottweiler. Each person also had either a hunting rifle or a shotgun with a handgun, except for me. We parked our cars on this tiny dirt road used by game wardens or border patrol and hiked about 4 miles into the woods. By this time, it was already starting to get a little dark. We decided to build a fire right away so we could set up tents. 2 of the group and 1 of the dogs went out to gather wood while the rest of us started setting up the tent. It was one of those huge 6 to 8 person ones. November gets cold up there, but the tent was set up in about 15 minutes and the trio still weren't back. We said screw it and started a fire with some branches from around the site. We started hearing crashing noises headed our way like someone was running their butts off. The 2 guys came barreling through, wide-eyed, and the dog was nowhere to be seen. They started yammering on about seeing one of the other guys out in the woods acting weird, so they started trying to get close. and every time they got close, though, he would just move away. They said at one point he just disappeared and then popped up not 10 feet behind them. They also mentioned a really bad rotten meat and spoiled milk smell popping up around them. They tried asking what was up, but there was no answer, and then apparently he took off, sprinting like Usain Bolt into the woods. The dog took off after him, barking its head off, and the two dudes lost both the guy and the dog pretty soon, and the smell started disappearing as well. Far off, they heard a weird screeching followed by a really loud dog's yelp. Then the smell came back with a vengeance, this time with what they described as mad giggling. They got out of there and back to the camp, and they got really angry at the dude, but all of us who were there vouched for the guy, and so pretty soon we were all weirded out but still thought that it was just this really messed up elaborate joke. I said as much and got yelled at and then had, well, where the heck is the dog then, tossed at me. Good point. And at this point though, the sun was already well on its way down, so we built a fire up and brought out some Coleman lanterns as well. All of us huddled around the fire, eating MREs, and our guns were at hand. About 15 minutes after dark, the remaining dog, the Rottweiler, kind of perked up and started growling. And I mean, they were really aggressively growling as well.
So it was not
the
that
smell
dog.
popped back up, and the guys were not wrong about that smell. I had smelled rotten deer carcasses that have smelled fresher than this. Weird groaning started up, and you could hear branches and leaves cracking around the perimeter of our camp. The noping intensified all around, and the dog was going ballistic, so one of the guys with a shotgun, Greg, stood up and fired off 3 rounds of buckshot randomly into the woods.
Ah, okay.
This hellacious screech came out of the woods and started moving away from us fast, and the smell dissipated as well. We waited about an hour and then decided to try and get some sleep with 2 people on guard at all times.
Oh
The first
damn, I
watch was
missed
me
this
and
in
another
this
guy,
drawing.
Victor.
Oh,
The
no.
dog was chilling around the fire as well.
No
And
one
2
said
hours
it.
in, nothing happened,
You
so
can see
we
it.
woke up Greg and Tom for their turn. After being asleep for a little while, I woke up to that smell, and Greg was yelling his head off. We got up and headed outside. Greg was looking around the edge of the woods with a spotlight and calling out Tom's name. I asked what happened. They had been sitting there when they heard one of the guys from earlier calling out from the woods. The dog started growling and rushed the spot, and Tom followed after. The dog went through some bushes and he lost him, so Tom followed him into the woods. Greg had been yelling for him when he heard Tom begin to say something before he was cut off. I can't leave him out there. So we all put on some clothes, grabbed a flashlight or a spotlight for each person and our guns, and headed out. By this time, the smell was everywhere and it was making most of us rather nauseous, but we kept going because we wanted to find Tom. We found some of his tracks but lost the trail when they just stopped. Literally no other footprints after a while, and none leading back the way he'd come. One of the guys at the back was shining his light around and kind of stopped and made this sort of weird noise, then started yelling, "You freaking jerk, I've been worried sick about you." The rest of the group walked over to look, and there was Tom standing a good 20 feet away, but he was standing very wrong.
Oh
"Are
no.
you okay, buddy? You need some help?" He just stood there, deadpan, and slowly nodded yes. A few of us walked over and put an arm around his shoulders to kind of support him. We noticed that he reeked, and the dude hadn't even been out here for a full day.
That's
Now
not
laughs
it.
abound except for him, and we thought nothing of it except worried that maybe he fell and hit his head or something. Back at the camp, we tried to lay him down, but he just refused to, so we let him stay outside by the fire. A couple of us went to sleep, but Greg, Vic, and I decided to stay up and keep an eye on him. Watching him, he did weird jerk muscle spasm type things every now and then. Very creepy stuff. We thought that it might be something serious. He was mostly quiet and slow to respond to things until it came to food. We gave him an MRE to eat, and he only ate the meat out of it. We shrugged it off, and then he got up and started moving around, very jerky-like, looking towards the woods. He asked us if we wanted to come into the woods with him for firewood. Besides the fact that it was pitch black out, besides the fire and also the huge stack of firewood that we collected on the way back, it wasn't all that weird. He jerked something like a shrug before walking weirdly into the woods, and at this point, we were on guard and didn't try to stop him.
On guard.
Greg got up a few minutes later to step into the tent for something, so I was outside with Vic when the smell hit my nose like a ton of bricks, and I gagged. Then I started hearing some sort of gibbering and giggling. I'd never been more freaked out in my life, and you could tell that Vic was feeling the same. Greg came out in time to hear it really well, and then went inside to wake everyone up. He froze at the tent flap and then started cursing, which woke everyone up. I didn't know why he was cursing, but it was working. When they were all up and awake, he counted everyone, and you could see him turn white.
It's not good.
What's up, dude? Apparently, while he was inside, he did a quick body count, and there were 4 bodies inside. Someone, or something, had been chilling in our tent without us realizing that it had gotten in.
Oh.
We lost it hard at that moment.
Wrong
And then
layer.
everyone
I
started
didn't
asking where
get
Tom
another
was.
layer.
At this time, the gibbering gets louder, and you can hear a bunch of nonsense moving through the woods. We hear Tom's voice calling at us from the woods to come help him, but it's all off key, and every now and then he would start giggling.
It's fine.
We built the fire up and sat around it with all the lanterns on full and weapons at hand until the sun started coming up. As soon as it was enough to see, we put the fire out and packed our stuff and made for the vehicles. We started hearing the giggling, and the smell returned,
I think
and we just got out of there back for the car. We got there, and there were scratches all over them, and most of the windows were smashed, and the seats were ripped to shreds. We just needed them babies to run, so we tossed the keys into the ignition and heard the sweet, glorious sound of an internal combustion engine starting up. We tossed our stuff in, got in, and sped out of there. We didn't talk about it for a few months, and most of us didn't even admit that it happened. One of the guys with us told us later that he'd seen Tom at the edge of the woods, staring at us as we left, and apparently he had this very creepy grin on his face. And I believe him. I know that I'll never go camping that far away again without at least a lot more people
No,
than
no,
6.
never go camping with Tom again.
But I believe that was my first run-in with skinwalkers.
At least no one died. Maybe. Maybe Tom did die. Yo, my back hurts.
In the summer of 2013, I decided it was time to kill coyotes for that sweet, sweet fur. I grabbed my bare bones basic AR-15 that I got for cheap. I like the way an AK slings a fix, so I ghettoed a sling point to put on the barrel. I slung it on my right side around my neck, messenger bag style, and took my ATV up to a cabin on the mountain. Upon arriving, I took the key to my ATV and started looking around. I had been throwing squirrel and rabbit guts into the woods to attract predators. Checking my bait, I found it all gone, and a strange feeling persisted. The guy who lives on the mountain just down the road left in his car just as I decided that I should look around in the woods. Every time I stepped, I kept thinking that I heard another footstep shuffling through the grass and brush. I saw a stick-figured shape thing at a distance a little bit down the hill from me. I sort of waved at it, and it slipped behind a tree.
Another layer.
I thought, okay, goodbye, and walked back to the cabin, deciding to sit around and just drink for a while. I started hearing coyote yelps and stuff in the distance, so I got my gat ready to blast a couple of fools. I sat with the lights off on the porch, but nothing came by. Then the yelping turned into a distant, "Help me." I looked over to the neighbor's house and the lights were off.
Okay, it's not this layer.
It didn't click that he left, and I got up and listened. "Help me. Help me."
Who needs help? What?
I thought, oh God, he broke his leg and is stuck in the woods with coyotes or something. I got close enough into the woods to tell that it was on an ATV trail, and I decided to take my ATV and AR, driving towards the person saying help me when I came to a U-shaped dip in the path. Without hitting my brakes, I just coasted down it. I heard something right in front of me on the trail scream, "Help me," and I freaked out trying to turn. I ended up flipping my ATV, and I can't really remember, but I blacked out for a minute and woke up under the ATV with it pinned on top of me. I sat still and waited for my eyes to adjust before feeling around. My left leg was pinned under the ATV, and I tried pushing it, but I couldn't get it off. It's like I got 100 pounds heavier in a couple of seconds. The sling around my neck told me that I still had a rifle. I dragged it to me, realizing my arm was bleeding in the meantime. I checked over the gun. The handguard was messed up and the stock was cracked, but it appeared to still be functional. I've got 30 rounds to keep me safe until the night's over or someone finds me. And I sat and listened closely to the sounds of the forest before I heard something shuffling in the grass.
Ooh, no,
That silence is
that's
everything.
not good.
It's dead quiet, and I don't think I've ever felt more fear than I have in this moment. I heard it shuffling around. Help me. Help me. I didn't know if I should respond or just sit in silence. Its shuffling got closer and something appeared.
Cracking my back was
like if you had fallen at a bar and
good
the
idea, but at
bartender
the same
sort of
time a
looked at
bad
you
idea.
funny. This thing looked like it was 9 feet tall, frozen solid. I twiddled my fingers, reaching for my gun, brought it to my shoulder, and sat there pointed at whatever this thing was. I didn't want to look at it because I just felt so much fear.
Yeah, I would
Help
too.
me. I heard it again. I heard it climbing over the ATV. I looked away, but something grabbed my face. My mind went completely blank, looking for the trigger, but I couldn't find it. Slowly, it moved my head over, and I was face to face with this thing. It looked like how almost everyone describes them. A golem that had done crack, carved up its face with sunken cheeks and deep eyes. To this day, I've never smelled anything quite as bad as the breath from that thing. I felt the flash hider on my AR bump into something, and I remembered that I had it aimed at the thing. My brain rebooted, and I screamed as loud as I could. It screamed back. I started yanking, not pulling or squeezing the trigger as fast as I could. The gun was going off, and my ears started to ring. It grabbed my hair and started slamming my head into the ground as fast as it could, still pulling the trigger as fast as I could. It ripped the gun from my hand and started beating me with it. It was still screaming as loud as it could while beating me over the head with my own gun. Lights started flickering through the woods. I was about to black out when I heard something louder than the screaming. I swear I saw the thing's head fly open.
Ooh.
I dropped my gun,
Damn.
screamed like a child that had just been shoved into an oven, and ran for it. My gun was dropped 10 feet from my head, and the light was getting closer. I didn't know if I was dying or being saved. Somebody started screaming my name, telling me to hold on. Something was tugging my arm. I looked over, and it was the guy who lived down the road. He had a huge revolver, a Magnum Research BFR. At that moment, I just blacked out and woke up in a hospital with a ton of stitches in my head. When I eventually got out, I asked my neighbor what he saw that night, and he just replied, "A bear. We get them often up here." I'm not entirely convinced that I was nearly beaten to death with my own gun by a bear.
Yeah, that's no bear.
Hey Joel, I've been a big fan for a while now, and thankfully I've never had anything happen to me that might necessitate the writing of a scary story. But then recently, I asked my mom about an unusual memory that I had from my childhood, which I then found out was just the tip of the iceberg. Now, from memory, my version of the story goes kind of like this. This happened when I was 8 years old, so Thanksgiving, 1993. Me and my family drove way across the state to spend the night with my aunt and uncle on my mom's side.
A
I was
normal
close
day.
with my cousins on
until-
that side of the family, and my mom and her sister were really close too, so we tended to spend a lot of holidays together. We drove over to their place. I remember playing with my cousins for a few hours, then we all sat down to dinner after being summoned by my mom and aunt. We all sat down, loaded up our plates, and the last thing I remember is my mom and my aunt telling us that we were going to have dinner in the upstairs bedrooms. I have this distinct recollection of not wanting to eat my food upstairs, but then my mom said, "Anyone who eats their turkey upstairs gets to watch the Mighty Ducks on the big TV in the mommy and daddy bedroom, okay?" And that was all that needed to be said.
Seriously?
And we were all up in her bedroom before we could say, "Attack the puck."
TV or something?
My mom laid out a blanket for us, put all of our plates down on it, then we just sat there, perfectly content. Mom stayed with us, but she didn't eat anything. Whenever we needed to use the bathroom, she would walk us there and back, but then anytime we wanted to go downstairs for any reason, she'd tell us to wait where we were, and then she returned with whatever it was that we wanted. The way I remembered it, it was the best Thanksgiving ever. We got to eat dessert up there too. We watched a whole bunch of other movies, and then we all fell asleep in my aunt and uncle's bed before driving back home sometime the next morning. And that's where my memory of the event ends. And like I said, for the longest time, I remember nothing except how cool it was to be able to watch the Mighty Ducks while eating my turkey. I somehow knew it was an exception. We
No, I'm not.
asked if we could
Don't-
do the
we
same
don't talk
thing in the
about
years that followed,
me.
and were always told no. But then last year, I just so happened to ask my dad about that Thanksgiving and why, just for 1 year, we got to eat in front of the TV. And I remember he gave me this look, and it being one that I didn't recognize. I feel like we were all used to seeing our dads with like 3 basic facial expressions. The first is that I'm not mad right now, but I'm ready for something kind of look, with the second being straight up mad, and the third being my sports team just won a game kind of smile.
I honestly,
day,
let's think.
my
Stop. Personally, like my dad, like my biological dad, I have only seen him with a smiling face, like happy. Happy face and like no expression, like a poker face. My stepfather, I've seen him with happy face, poker face, silly face, like he would make like funny faces. But none of my dads, I've never seen them mad. Like, yes, I've heard my stepfather be mad, but I've never seen him mad. And my dad, I don't really talk much to him, at least not topics that could make him mad. I try to avoid those. Because I don't remember. He got mad at me once, but I don't remember how he looked. I just remember it was because I said something in a not so polite way, I guess. And he's scary. Apparently he's scary because I'm afraid of making him mad. But you never seen my dad's, like, I feel like you only see your mom with more expressions than your dad. That is true. I wonder why. Why is it like that?
Dad gave me this look that I could only interpret as fear. Whatever the answer to my question was, It wasn't some half-buried memory made fuzzy by too
I'm
many
happy
blue
though.
ribbons.
I am very happy. I
It
can
was
see
something
my
he
father's
remembered very well,
mad,
and it was something
being mad
that frightened him.
at me.
He let out a big sigh and told me, "Don't tell your mom I told you this," and then went into the grown-ups version of events, which is as follows. So everything I told you to start with still stands, and by that I mean everything was going fine until we sat down to dinner. Then as we were eating, the phone started to ring. My uncle got up to answer the call, and it was a man asking for my aunt. So he calls her to the phone and then sits back down to eat. A minute or two later, my aunt comes back in, but she's quiet and she's not touching her food. My uncle asks her what's wrong, but she tells him she's fine. It was just someone from work calling or some other excuse which got him to drop it. Then another minute or two goes by and the grown-up starts seeing a car's headlights turn into my aunt and uncle's driveway. They're not expecting any other guests, but it was Thanksgiving, so it wasn't out of the question that someone might stop over unexpectedly. But instead of just acting curious like the rest of the grown-ups, my dad said that he watched the color drain from my aunt's face. My uncle was halfway to getting up from his seat, and my dad said my aunt grabbed him by the arm and said 3 hushed words that had the color draining from his face too. "Get your gun," she said. Obviously, my mom and dad wanted to know what the hell was happening, but there was no time to really explain. All my aunt told them was that we might all be in a lot of danger, at which point my mom started gathering up us kids and taking us upstairs. We'd all been sitting at the kids' table at the time, and although it was right there next to the adults' table, I don't remember anything except the moment my mom told me to go upstairs. As I've already told you, she then stayed upstairs with us, making sure that we didn't see anything or hear anything of what happened next, but then headed up by my uncle, and my dad and aunt went to see who'd showed up unexpectedly. Having listened to the advice of my aunt, my uncle had his .45 ready to rock, but later said that he had no idea who was out there or why my aunt was so scared, and all the unanswered questions had him just as scared as she was. But still, he did what he had to and walked outside with his gun ready to go. According to my dad, they walked outside and they can't see anything right away because the guy's headlights are shining bright and just blinding them. But then they take a few steps off the porch and their security light lit up the stranger's car. My dad said he could see the guy standing behind his open trunk, but he couldn't see his face at all at first. Meanwhile, my uncle was marching towards the guy, asking him to identify himself, and the guy steps out from behind his car, holding his gun.
What?
My aunt screamed, then ran back inside,
Stalker?
but my dad said that he was frozen, knowing that if this random gun-toting stranger shot my uncle, he'd have to try and rush him from the side because there was no way he was going to let some maniac gun into his house where his kids were upstairs. But my dad also said that round about the same time he saw the gun, he noticed something about the guy holding it. He was drunk as a skunk. He didn't so much as step out from behind the car as stumble out from behind it, and as my uncle approached him, the guy looked like he had no idea how to use the gun he was holding. My uncle raised his own and kept telling him, "You point that thing at me and I'll kill you." And by some miracle, the stranger either couldn't load the thing properly or couldn't get a good grip on the side because my uncle made it all the way over to him to knock him out before he could even look up.
That was terrible.
Dad said it was a nasty hit too, but even so, he'd never been so relieved in his entire life. After that, my dad rushed him, disarmed the stranger for good, then he and my uncle basically sat on the guy until the cops showed up. I say sat on the guy, more like sat with him, because when he woke up from being knocked out, he had next to no idea where he was and was so out of it that he didn't even try to get up until he saw the lights of the sheriff's deputies approaching my aunt and uncle's house. The deputies cuffed the guy, then took him away, and all the while me and my cousins are up in the back bedroom, completely none the wiser that any of this was happening. Like I already said, Mom stayed with us until bedtime, and I remember my aunt and uncle coming in to say goodnight too. Now looking back on it, they were as cool and calm as anything, not even a hint of what had just unfolded downstairs. But after we went to sleep, it was a different story. My aunt told my mom, dad, and uncle for the very first time the story of why she'd packed up and moved away from her home city, and it was all because of some psycho that she'd made the mistake of getting hitched to. He didn't hit her. He wasn't a violent man, which made sense after the sorry display that he made with the pistol. But he found other ways to make her life absolutely terrible. At first, she didn't need to work because he could take care of her, and she didn't need her own checking accounts because why would she? My aunt was too naive to realize that when her ex-husband turned bad, not having her own money would mean that she was basically stranded. Her ex took the phone out of the house, threw all the food out one at a time, then left her alone for a night, and she had to beg on the street for the payphone money to call my grandma to come rescue her. She was so ashamed of having gotten into that situation, of having been so stupid as she put it, that she swore my grandma to secrecy, and it was a secret that she took to her grave with her. And sometime after, my aunt moved to Chicago to be closer to my sister, met my uncle, and the rest is history. She thought that she'd left that whole sad chapter of her life behind, and after 10 years of not hearing from him, she had no idea if her ex was dead or alive. Not until he showed up at her house early on that Thanksgiving evening with a gun and 2 gallons of gas in his trunk to burn the house down after he'd shot us all. At least, that was his plan. The guy ended up going to prison. Not for as long as anyone would have liked him to, but if he steps foot back in the town my aunt and uncle live in, not Chicago by the way, then he'll go straight back to prison, no questions asked. Obviously, 30 years have gone by, and my parents and aunt are all in their 70s by now. That means that her ex is going to be around that age too, and hopefully he's somehow found a way to make peace with the whole thing, and he's not going to try and reach out again. But that's the thing that actually frightens me about this whole story. It's not actually over yet. Everyone just kind of assumes that he's not going to show up again, mostly on account of how old he'll be. But from where I'm standing, it looks a lot more like hope than assumption. They're all just hoping this guy isn't going to show up again, and the idea that there's some impending family tragedy on the horizon, it makes me feel like there's a blade hanging over my neck, just waiting to drop at any time. I'm scared what my aunt went through twice will only really ever be over when her ex is dead. At least I hope so, because God knows I don't want it to end with anyone else dying except him. Something like 10 years ago, I got my first ever dog, a toy-sized poodle puppy. She was way cute and also way too smart for her own good. She quickly learned that little kids, elderly ladies, and people who wore pink and sparkly stuff loved puppies, so much that she could get people food from them. Well, one day she escapes the yard while I'm vacuuming the house, and I end up going all over searching. I started on foot, then decided that she must have gone far. Maybe got out right when I started, and so I got into my car and started driving all over the neighborhood, calling for her and showing people walking by pictures of her and asking if they'd seen my puppy. As I'm driving around hollering for her, I see some kids on their lawn playing with Barbies. They look 5 to 6 years old maybe, and they hear me calling for my pup and come running up to ask what kind of puppy I lost. I was going to show them my phone picture and then realized that this is the exact scenario they use to teach stranger danger. So instead I was like, go get your parents, I need to talk to them. One girl did, but the other stood there, even put her hands on the windowsill of my car and asked if I had the puppy in the car. At the time, my only thought was for the parents to hurry up because I really didn't know what to do. So the mom comes out and has a total panic over her child being right up at a stranger's car and comes running over. I explain to her that I lost my dog and I give her my number and show her the picture. But I doubt she believed any of it because she just scooped up her kids and carried them into the house. I just wanted to share this story because that day, I was the creep. And if you're wondering if I have found my puppy, I did. Or
That's
rather,
good.
a neighbor did. She had gone into his chicken coop and fallen asleep in a nest full of eggs and got sat on by the mama bird. When he went to collect the eggs, he was surprised to find a very waggy-tailed chick.
This may be a bit too bright. Okay, better.
I don't really have an explanation for what happened. I have ideas, but here's the story. I'm a freshly graduated high school student on my way to college. During my senior year, I had a job working for my grandfather as a farmhand, more or less a farm manager. He would give me instructions on what to do on the farm without him being there, most commonly feeding the cows. It was early November, and at this time, baseball practice started after school and would last from 3:25 to 5:30. By that time, the sun was almost down when I arrived at work and started getting ready.
Okay, I think I'm gonna leave it
One
like
day
this.
I had gotten dressed, filled up the buckets,
I
and
wasn't gonna
filled the
ruin it.
first farm when I realized that I didn't have a key to the other farm. Frustrated, I was forced to pick up 2 buckets at a time and walk them from the fence to the feed trough, a good 40-yard walk. While walking, I was trying to keep myself upbeat and just started to whistle. No real pattern or tune, just something that I came up with. When I came back and put the last buckets in the bed of the truck, I heard something from my neighboring property. It was whistling. Strange, I thought, as no one lives anywhere near that property and it sounded very close. I rationalized it was a mockingbird or something and just kind of went on with my life. The next couple of days I didn't whistle, but the whistling continued. Slowly over those few days it got clearer and
There
clearer
is so
until
much
it sounded
sun
like
that
regular
I
whistling.
can't really see what
Eventually
I am
it got louder.
coloring.
When I first heard it, it was very faint.
I can't
I almost missed
see
it
the
over the
difference
crunching
between
of
the
me
colors.
walking to my truck. In the last few days, I kind of became accustomed to the whistling and kind of expected it.
Especially the
When
dark
one day
colors.
it didn't come, I was a little disappointed. This time I had brought the key and walked up to the gate and started fiddling with my keys when I dropped them into the grass. I said, "Damn it," when I dropped them.
Oh, shit.
I squatted down and started to
Is it
search for them when I heard a very faint sound coming from the other property. A low groan or gurgle, and it was getting louder. At this point, I wasn't scared but more curious as to what was going on over there. I left my truck parked across from the property and walked a few feet down the road and hopped the fence at the property where I heard the sounds. The land in there goes straight uphill and is heavily wooded all throughout, and the further you go up, the more dense it gets. Looking back now, I made a few big mistakes that could have gotten me hurt. As I walked up the hill, I would occasionally hear the gurgle. It was far up the hill, so still as faint as it was before. As I walked, a bad smell started to hit my nose, a weird mixture of garbage and wet dog or something. I heard something as I was about to crest the hill. "Damn it."
What the
A very dry, low, and quite distorted "damn it" came from a couple of yards in front of me. It sounded like a 60-year-old smoker saying "damn it" very slowly, as if they didn't know English or something. I automatically thought someone was on our property, somewhat angry and paranoid now. I started to move slower. I didn't want this guy to hear me before I could see them. I kept going and stopped and listened when I heard another sound. "Damn it."
That's creepy.
"Damn it. Damn it." This guy was now slowly saying "damn it" normally, not long and drawn out in that eerie way, as if he didn't know English. I sat down on this log, kind of listening, trying to figure out what I should do about this person. He kept saying it over and over, and I noticed his tone was getting higher and his inflection was changing. And it hit me. This guy was perfectly mimicking me. My tone, inflection, literally everything. He even mimicked my frustration when I said it.
It's a skinwalker.
Angry and kind of scared now, I got up and started to crest the hill. I flicked on my flashlight on my phone. "Hey, this is private property." I was cut off mid-sentence. As I came over the hill, the light barely illuminated this naked figure squatting just a couple of yards in front of me. His eyes were illuminated by the faint glow of my flashlight. I automatically felt that something was wrong. This wasn't a regular person. His neck was longer than normal, and when I came up the hill, he winched his neck and snapped his head to look at me without moving. His eyes were too big, and his head was large and slender. He was squatted in a ballerina-type squat. I looked at his body. He was very skinny. His ribs were showing through his skin. There was a short silence, and like a robot, the man turned in the leaves and slowly stood with his hands next to his side. I was debating if it was even a person. It was far too tall to be a person. "Damn it," it said in my voice. I turned and sprinted down the hill. It didn't feel like I was running, but more that my legs were just going through the motions. I didn't look back before I got to the fence, and when I hopped it, I got in my truck and sped away. Sadly, I still work at that farm, but I've never told anyone this story, not even my grandfather. I've only heard the whistling a few more times since then. I'm not really a believer in the paranormal, and I really try to find an explanation for weird stuff, and I believe that this may have just been some weird squatter, but I really don't know.
Yep. I need to draw more because I do not remember to make new layers.
Thanksgiving is coming up, and I know you sometimes make videos based on whatever holiday is on the horizon, so I wanted to send my story in about that time of the year. You see, I had a great childhood. I know that in the age of people wearing their traumas on their sleeve, that's not a very cool thing to admit, but it's true. I don't have any issues with my mom or dad, who are still together after 40 plus years of marriage. Neither was I bullied at school. And unlike my two best friends growing up who had liver problems and diabetes, respectively, I never had any chronic medical issues to deal with. And I used to think that I was lucky. Everyone seemed to have some messed up thing going on in their family, be it a divorce, a sibling or parent with drug or alcohol problems, anything that meant that they were broody and world-weary by the time we hit high school. But I didn't, and on top of that, I couldn't exactly see anything on the horizon either. But during Thanksgiving of 2005, when I was 15 years old, I found out that everything in my family wasn't exactly perfect either. So, I have an uncle that's almost 20 years younger than my dad. Dad was an only child all through his teenage years, then one day, he got the news that his little brother was on the way. My grandparents always said my uncle was an unexpected blessing, which I guess means he was an accident. But then with him being the baby of the family, he was doted on and spoiled like it was nobody's business. And this ended up with my dad and uncle being worlds apart in terms of age, but also worlds apart in terms of personality too. My dad spent a few years in the Marine Corps, and he wasn't like Jocko or anything like that, but it definitely stuck with him. Whereas my uncle was a struggling musician, then a struggling artist, and then a struggling writer, all because my grandparents blew so much hot air up his butt that he thought that ambition could just trump talent. I always thought he was a cool guy, and I could never understand why my dad gave him such a hard time. He always seemed so laid back and chilled out, and I could talk to him about all the stuff my dad found boring or had no time for. I was always pleased to see him whenever he visited, and he and my dad never argued in front of me, which I appreciate looking back on, at least until the Thanksgiving that I'm about to tell you about. So one night, we're having dinner, and my dad tells my mom that my uncle is bringing his girlfriend over for Thanksgiving. I remember being excited to meet her, as anyone dating my uncle must be as cool as him, right?
Wait, no.
Mom and Dad seemed kind of nervous. Emphasis on kind of, but put it down to never having met her prior to some big family occasion. Cut to maybe a week or two later, and my uncle shows up for Thanksgiving and starts introducing his girlfriend to the whole family. She was very attractive, I'll say that much, but she was definitely out of place with her leather jacket and tattoos. Now that being said, my family were as friendly as ever and tried their best to make her feel welcome. Dad made a toast, we ate dinner, then everyone kind of went their separate ways to do the after-dinner stuff.
Nope.
The men went to watch sports
nope.
highlights, the women had coffee around the breakfast nook in the kitchen, and the younger kids played among themselves. But me, I went upstairs to my bedroom to play video games. I can't remember how long I played for, but it was mid-evening when I went downstairs to grab a soda, so maybe like 7:30 to 8 o'clock or something. I walked downstairs into the kitchen, and right by our refrigerator was the door to the garage. I opened up the fridge, grabbed a soda, then after I closed it and started walking out of the kitchen, I heard something coming from the garage. To my knowledge, everyone is either sitting around the TV or playing bridge in the dining room. There's no one left in the kitchen, and there definitely shouldn't have been anyone in the garage, so obviously the question was, who was in there, and why?
What the fuck?
It could have easily been maybe a raccoon, I guess, but my biggest fear, the one that had me reaching for the door to take a peek outside, was the idea that someone had broken into our garage, the same garage that had direct access to a house full of totally unsuspecting people, and myself. I remember reaching for the door handle, real slow, then pulling it open real fast and then just scanning the interior. Something caught my eye right away. It was my uncle's girlfriend. Her eyes just looked wrong.
She's a
There was
monster.
blood coming out of her nose and mouth, and at first I thought my uncle was trying to help her, but then right there with me watching, he hits her.
What?
And he hit her so hard that her head just jerked back in this weird ragdoll kind of way that I can still remember clear as day even all these years later. And the second he did, I slammed the door closed and ran into the TV room and managed to get the attention of everyone there by just pointing towards the kitchen and saying, "Uncle Tony, in the garage." His name isn't actually Tony, by the way. I just don't know how to describe the moment without dropping a name. Everyone ran to the garage. The cops were called, and within maybe 10 or 15 minutes, what had once been this nice family atmosphere had turned into total chaos, which spilled out into the streets and ended with my uncle in a cop car and his girl in an ambulance.
Damn.
I didn't get to see all that much before my mom and dad screamed at me to get up to my room. They were so angry that I thought that they were mad at me for a while, and afterwards, they explained something to me that I don't think childless people are even capable of conceiving. So much of what a parent does bears no other purpose than to protect their children. Sometimes a parent can come across as a total jerk, just a soulless, joyless husk that wants nothing more than to suck all the happiness out of their kid's life. I know there's times when parents overstep the line and genuinely are cruel and abusive to their kids, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the things that feel like punishments or restrictions that are actually nothing but manifestations of love and protection. And that's
It was someone
pretty much
that
the
beats
reason
by
my mom and dad shielded me
Drefe.
from the truth about Uncle Tony.
What? Who
They didn't
is
want to cut him off
Drefe?
or have me resenting
Ask
them for not
Drefe to
allowing us to
us.
have a relationship. So they went about this difficult balancing act of allowing him to visit me
What?
without filling my head about stuff
Why?
that he was doing in his life. Stuff like doing drugs, committing petty financial crimes, stealing from grandparents, and, as I saw with my own eyes, being a complete piece of human garbage, and how he chose to treat the women in his life. Which reminds me, like I said, Uncle Tony, again, not his real name, got picked up by the cops after my dad and some neighbors basically beat the crap out of him and pinned him down in our driveway at that time. But his girlfriend, she had to stay in the hospital overnight.
Damn.
My uncle had beaten her pretty bad, and I think the doctors were scared that she had a concussion, but all she had was a broken nose and a
Yeah,
busted
I
lip, I guess.
got that. Why?
Mom and
What
Dad paid her
happened?
hospital
Can I
bills,
ask
and
what happened?
Mom went to visit with her sometime
Why
after,
would
I'm guessing to ask
you
about her
do
pressing
that?
charges. And to this day, I still don't know for sure if my mom went over to talk her into it. She's always claimed that all she said was something like, "We'll support you no matter what your decision is," and that the girl went ahead and pressed charges all of her own free will. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I've heard way too many stories about battered wives and girlfriends being too afraid to talk to the cops for years before they suddenly snap and decide to do something themselves. And maybe that was the case with my uncle and his girl. Or maybe my mom knew that unless someone stepped in and encouraged her to do the right thing, the same pattern of misery and violence would just go on until someone either died or got sent to jail.
What?
Just to be clear, that's entirely speculation on my part, and I guess I'll take my mom's word for it that she didn't intervene or interfere. But either way, it went to court, and my uncle pled no contest, seeing as there were a ton of witnesses against him, and he ended up doing 3 years of a 6-year sentence, at which point my parents totally cut him off. And by that time, I was completely okay with him doing that, as I had absolutely no desire to see my Uncle Tony ever again. Now I know it might sound kind of messed up, but for the first few days after it happened, I wasn't angry or horrified or appalled at what my uncle did. I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe someone that I looked up to so much was capable of doing something just so awful. I just couldn't make sense of it. In my mind, there had been some kind of terrible misunderstanding, and I still haven't really forgiven myself for thinking this, but I couldn't help but think this girl had done something to deserve it, I guess. Was she trying to steal something? Had he caught her doing drugs? There had to be some logical reason why my laid-back, incredibly cool uncle would do something so terrible.
That's what
But there wasn't a reason.
everyone's
At least nothing that could possibly justify putting his hands on her in the way that he did. And I had to hear the whole thing from my mom, following her visit to the still recovering and now ex-girlfriend, to really understand what had happened. One of the things I wonder in the days after was why his girl hadn't screamed. If they were having a fight or whatever, then how had it gone from near silence to physical violence without any kind of escalation in volume?
Okay, so
that was just one of the
hard part
reasons
comes
why
now.
I very naively
Molly
thought that there must have been something more
has a
to the
freaking
story,
heart
right up
with
until
a
my mom told me the
snake
following.
on his necklace.
She hadn't asked my uncle's ex the same question,
And
not
that's
directly anyway.
freaking
It just
hard to
came out
draw.
during my mom's retelling of her visit.
So
My uncle's ex didn't scream when he
I
started
would
hitting her
do
because she learned that if she did,
is
he'd only hit her harder. And this did two things. Number one, it gave me an idea of just how long the abuse had been going on for. And two, it made me hate my uncle. And
before
I mean really
placed,
hate
I
him.
forgot to draw.
There was, and is, something so sickeningly sadistic about that one little detail, and once I had it in my head, there was no coming back from it. That was the uncle I didn't know I had. That was the version of my uncle that my parents tried to shield me from. I guess that's maybe an overdone concept with some of the stories that you probably get sent to you here. As in the old, I thought they were sweet but they were actually a monster, but I also understand why they don't ever really get old either. There's something a lot of people go through in their lives, realizing that sometimes things aren't quite what they seem. But a lot of my school friends got that lesson way early, whereas I was way into my teenage years when I realized that sometimes you think you know someone, when really, you don't know them at all.
My aunt told me one time, you never truly know no one. No one? Anyone. That the only person that knows you, like, not even, like, the most, would be your mom.
Firstly, I don't know what your policy is on this kind of thing, so feel free to leave it out if you really don't think it's necessary, but I'd like to give everyone a little trigger warning regarding the topic of taking your own life. I personally don't think I need them, but I've talked to enough people with these kind of ideations over the years to know that they're greatly appreciated by those who think they need them. So if you don't mind including this one, I think people would be very grateful. I guess I gave it away already, but you see, I'm struggling with these kind of thoughts for a long time. I ended up getting addicted to painkillers after a sports injury, and although I tried as hard as I possibly could to break the cycle and kick my habit, I kept on failing time and time again. Addiction counseling just didn't seem to work for me, and once I'd picked up street drugs a few times and knew my way around, keeping me away from opiates became harder and harder. In the end, I decided that the only way out, the only true way out, was to take my own life and stop being such a burden on absolutely everyone around me.
And then we trace it.
And I survived.
Because
and after I ended up in the hospital, my parents were informed of what I tried to do.
So I just take it from
it was
another
a sort of
trying
come to Jesus moment when I realized how far I'd fallen, and from then on, we did things different. There were no more rehabs, no more treatment programs in the city. I was going out to the middle of nowhere, to where
This
my mom
tracing
and dad
is
owned a
allowed,
little
by the way,
vacation
it's not
cabin,
cheap.
and I was basically going
It is
to
kinda
live there
cheap,
until
but
opiates just weren't part
it's
of my
my
thought
own
process
art, it's
anymore.
fine.
It was like a bridge between where I was and wherever I was going to go next. And although I didn't know where exactly that would be, I sure as hell knew that it wasn't going to involve any pills or powders that I couldn't buy at a mom and pop drugstore. I ended up staying at that cabin for 4 months, and it was in a real sorry state that I found it too. I guess that just showed my resolve though. Cleaning it gave me something to keep me occupied, and I guess the whole process is maybe good for the mind or something, because it definitely had this therapy-like quality to it that had an awesome effect on my peace of mind. So like I say, I made a house a home, so to speak, then ended up staying there for basically the whole of the fall, and then including Thanksgiving. I'd been there a while by that point, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't miss my family. In fact, I was just jonesing for some company all around. So when my mom and dad suggested driving up to visit with some turkey, stuffing, and cranberry sandwiches, I was in no position to turn them down. They traveled up, and we had a nice afternoon just hanging out, and then we all went to bed at a pretty early hour before rising just as early. I made us some eggs, they packed up their things, but before they left, my parents asked if I wanted to go for a walk. It had been a while since they'd visited the cabin, so they figured that it'd be nice to just sort of reacquaint themselves with some of the old trails that we used to walk during our childhood vacations. I remember the old route because it led up to this big iron bridge that ran high above a shallow stream. Walking across it always used to freak me out as a kid because looking through the railings down into the stream gave me the willies in a big way, but the more we walked there, the less freaked out I got, and eventually it became one of my favorite spots whenever we visited the cabin. So, we got to going on our walk along those winding trails that went up and up until we reached the iron footbridge. Then when we got there, we see this other guy standing by the railings looking over the edge. There are plenty of other cabins in the area, so I just figured this guy was doing the same thing we were, taking a little walk, maybe before or after dinner, just to clear his head and digest his turkey. We didn't call out to him or anything. I guess I figured that we'd just give him a friendly nod if we made eye contact while walking across the bridge. We also weren't talking very loudly. We were just enjoying the stillness of the forest, so I guess that had us talking in library voices or something. Go figure. Anyway, my point is, this guy didn't see or hear us until we were almost right up on the bridge, and when he did, I knew something was off just from the look he gave us. He got startled and had this sort of "you caught me" expression that I found really confusing at first, but then he did what he did, and that look made a chilling amount of sense. The second after the guy saw us, he threw himself off the bridge.
What?
My mom let out this really shocked gasp, while my dad went to grab her like he was trying to protect her from something that couldn't actually do her any physical harm. Me, on the other hand, I just ran forward towards where the guy had jumped. Looking back, I don't really know what I was thinking, and to be honest, I don't really know if I was really thinking at all. I guess it was just some gut reaction to try and stop the guy from falling. But he was in free fall by the time I even stepped foot onto the bridge. He didn't do it like 1 foot up the railing then jumped. He sort of rolled himself over, I guess to try his best to land on his head or his neck. But things didn't work out like that for him. He didn't get to go quick, and after I saw what remained of him, I've never been able to get that image out of my head.
That's traumatic.
I don't want to go into too much detail and turn this into some big, gross kind of affair, but just imagine what it would be like to somehow survive a fall that breaks dozens of bones, but still has you awake and feeling everything.
Yeah, no, that
The
sounds
image was
horrible.
bad, but I honestly think the noises he was making were worse. He couldn't really scream. He was trying to. He was trying with all he could to express just how much agony he felt. But for some reason, probably in some part due to the devastation his body had just endured, he couldn't actually scream. The only sound he could make was this croaking noise, like a big bullfrog, and he only made it 1 or 2 times before I ran back towards my parents to turn us back towards the cabin. Thankfully, the cell reception in the area wasn't too bad, which meant that my first 911 call connected just fine, and I was able to tell the dispatcher what had happened. A forest ranger was first on the scene, but by the time they got there, the guy lying in the shallow stream had stopped making all of his terrible noises.
I'm not sure.
I
Let's
honestly
see.
think that even if the ranger had been there with his medical supplies the moment the guy jumped off the bridge, there still wouldn't have been a thing that we could do for him. He was a mess, beyond saving, and I have no doubt that he died in absolute agony. I moved out of the cabin a month later, and although it wasn't the whole reason, witnessing that man take his life up near the bridge was definitely playing a part. It's not like I was having nightmares or anything either, and I really don't want to sound too self-absorbed here because what happened to that guy is a tragedy all on its own, but I couldn't help but think to myself, that could have been you down there, writhing in agony, trying and failing to scream your last scream. And I think that was the time that I knew that I was going to be okay. Because the one thing that I was certain of is that I never want to end up like that guy. I know how it feels to be that desperate. But what I realized was that I never once considered that taking my own life would be a selfish thing to do. I thought the selfish thing was to try and carry on living, that it was cowardly to just go on living knowing that it was going to be an addict my whole life. But the truth is, choosing life is the bravest thing a person can do. Waking up, getting dressed, and going to face whatever life throws at you, that's the really difficult part. And there's personal glory in even the smallest of successes. That, and I wouldn't wish seeing a body like that on anyone, not even a dumb junkie like me, because now, I do believe people can be haunted by the dead. Not by some sort of apparition, but the ghost inside their head.
Saturation. Warm. Just warmth.
For Thanksgiving of 2009, I took my family over to my sister's place. They lived in Chattanooga, which was a long drive from where we lived in Indianapolis, but I had no problem driving all that way to spend the holidays with my brother-in-law. He became my best friend during those early dad years, as I didn't really have anyone else to ask advice from. My own father passed away when I was a kid, and my friends who actually got it together and had families didn't do so until their 30s. So when it came to getting dad advice, he was the first person I turned to, and that little conversation evolved into one of the closest friendships of my life. So we got there, he cooked us an amazing dinner, but afterwards, he complained that he wasn't feeling so hot. He went to the bathroom, then came back saying that there was fluid coming out of his ear, but was also quick to reassure us that he'd struggled with ear infections in the past and that it wasn't anything we needed to worry about. The night went on perfectly normal after that. We put the kids to bed at around 9, before adult bedtime ended up being around 11:30 to midnight. But then around 1 a.m., my sister wakes up to her husband trembling and sweating in the bed next to her, saying that he felt like he had a fever. He goes to the bathroom, takes some medication, but he's still awake and shivering at around 3 a.m. with no signs of feeling any better. The next morning, my sister got up early to take care of their boys and was mindful to be quiet so he could get some rest. I swung by in the morning with breakfast for them, and my sister informed me that he was still sleeping. Right away, I thought that was weird because he was never one to let a hangover keep him in bed, so I knew that he must have been feeling pretty terrible. The two of us left to leave him to get some rest, and tried to keep the noise from the boys to a minimum and let my brother-in-law get some rest as we all had plans that afternoon. Afternoon rolls around, and after calling a couple times and them not picking up, my wife and I went by the house at around 2 to check on my sister and brother-in-law.
Did it.
The moment we got there, I got this terrible feeling. When I stepped inside, I took no satisfaction in finding out how right I was.
Melissa
The moment my sister opened the door, She was white as a ghost as she told me to follow her
There we
upstairs because
go.
she desperately
My
needed
back
help.
hurts a
We sprinted up the
lot.
stairs to find my brother-in-law breathing
It was worth
extremely
it.
erratically, with all this
I
bright
just
green
need
snot
to-
coming out of his nose.
Oh, what the
My
fuck
sister was
is that
shaking
for?
him to get him to wake up, and you could hear the fluid in
That
his
should
lungs
not
as
be
he was
able to
breathing
fall
in.
down. What? There is
As
a
I started
ghost
trying to
here.
wake him up, my sister ran over to get water to pour on his face
I'm
to rinse off the
confused.
snot
Why
and try
what?
to startle him awake. And at that point,
Why
he
what?
stopped breathing. I looked up at my sister and we both knew that things were getting wildly serious and we had to act quick. She was fortunate to have had a few CPR lessons, so she started instructing me on exactly what needed to be done.
Why
We dragged him
Genderbend,
off the bed to the floor and
Because
started alternating
you
breathing in
know
his
the
mouth and chest
cursed
compressions. And this is when things started going from
the
bad
cursed
to worse.
let me just stop
We
this.
screamed down to my wife to call.
The cursed stream we don't really talk about. The one that will be buried in no in time, I guess. And also because since there is a Genderbend Sammy, we were joking about like Genderbend Mali. That he will like change his name to Melissa if I change mine to Sam, like I did for a while. Oh, that were nice. Cracking your wrist after drying for 2 hours feels so nice. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good, but it's nice. But yeah, that's why, because mostly because of the previous Ripple stream we did. When was it? Like Tuesday last week? I think it was Tuesday. That's why. And now I'll send it to the server. Melissa done. And of course we gotta have a mischievous cut. Done. Wait a second. No. Wait, no. We delete this. We are actually gonna take out the filter. It actually messes up the quality of the picture. Out with the filter. Out with the filter. Out with it. It messed up the quality. Yeah, ugh. Like this. Better. Hopefully. Save duplicate once again. Melissa. Yes. Replace it. Yes. Okay. Is it better now? Let me open it. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, okay. I will never use the filters again. Melissa done again. Or apparently the one messing it up is Discord. This is why I'm scared of fanfic depictions of Hey. I just draw what I think would be good, you know, like Malia it's more like to bully him, you know. This is how I bully. It's because he's my friend. I appreciate him, so I draw cursed art. So as long as you don't give me a reason to draw, I won't draw on stream. Yeah, alright. I am done for today. We finished Melissa. We listened to many stories about cycles and skinwalkers. I learned that there may be a skinwalker here or a witch. I don't know. I will do some research on what the heck are the myths over here that could possibly be what my family and I have heard. It's so creepy though, because I've heard them, like I'd be downstairs doing whatever, and I suddenly hear Sammy, and I'd be like, yes, and there's no one. I'd be like, oh, okay. Anyways, and then I continue doing whatever I'm doing. Yeah. Anyway, I be going now and eat something and take out the dogs because I hear them barking. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope you like this amazing art piece that I actually forgot to make the loose hair strands, but you know what? Fuck it. It's fine. It would just be for something extra. But yeah. With that being said, I will see y'all on Thursday. Yeah. So yeah, see ya. Bye. Let's actually rate someone. I wanna try and rate someone. Okay, I found someone. The friend Blue the Glue. They are streaming. They're streaming Love and Deep Space. All right, I'm gonna rate them and we'll see. Ooh, it's Silas. Okay, let's rate. Let's rate. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.